Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us on the program. I'm Joker Rogers. Here's what's coming up on the world today. U.S. President Donald Trump says U.S. Attorney General should release any credible information on sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas says the bloc is close to reaching an agreement on new sanctions against Russia. Plus, more tributes pouring from diaspora for the late former president of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari. Welcome again, everyone. U.S. President Donald Trump has called on Attorney General Pam Bondi to release any credible information on sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. This comes amid conspiracy claims about a possible cover-up that has sparked division even among President Trump's most loyal supporters in the MAGA Make America Great Again movement. Speaking to reporters, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene warned of significant consequences if voters believe details are being hidden. The Justice Department recently released a memo stating that there was no client list and no foul play involved in his death, but the backlash has persisted. White House sources say the president is increasingly frustrated that the controversy is distracting him from his policy wins. Cabinet tensions have also flared, with speculation growing over the future of top officials, including Attorney General Pam Bondi and Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino.
She's given us just a very quick briefing, and in terms of the credibility of the different things that they've seen. And I would say that, these files were made up by Comey, they were made up by Obama, they were made up by the Biden, we went through years of that with the Russia hoax, with all of the different things that we had to go through. We've gone through years of it, but she's handled it very well, and it's going to be up to her. Whatever she thinks is credible, she should release, yeah.
Meanwhile, Mr. Trump says he's disappointed but not done with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Speaking from the Oval Office, Mr. Trump said he trusts almost no one when pressed on whether he still trusts the Russian leader. The comment came just hours after the president announced a new round of weapons support for Ukraine and threatened fresh tariffs on Russia if there's no ceasefire deal in 50 days. Mr. Trump also voiced support for NATO despite previously calling it obsolete, saying that he now backs the alliance's principle of collective defense.
We had a great meeting with NATO, the Secretary General, and we're going to do something a little different for this country. We're going to supply weapons to NATO at a large amount. They're going to deliver the weapons, and they're going to pay for 100% of the weapons. So, a little different. Hi, John. So we're really, that's a big thing. And we thought we had 4 deals, Howard, right, with Putin. Somehow they end and we get off the phone. Oh, that was a very nice conversation. And then he sends missiles into buildings someplace. I say, what was that all about? So anyway, so we're going to be doing that with NATO. And it's fully approved, fully done. We'll send them a lot of weapons of all kinds, and they're going to deliver those weapons immediately to the site of the war, different sites of the war, and they're going to pay for 100% of them. This all was made possible by going from 2 to 5% a month ago when I went there. So, yeah. And those countries, those European countries, and I said, look, we have an ocean. It's not fair that we did, because under the Biden administration, we paid about 3.5 times more than they did. We were in for $350 billion. Got nothing for it. We were in for 350, and they were in for 100. So, which really meant one thing, because you have great business leaders here. It meant very simply that they were better negotiators than our president was. But so this is a very important thing, and hopefully that will come to an end at the end of 50 days. If we don't have a deal, then we're going to have to do. We have no choice but to do secondary tariffs. You call it secondary tariffs, which are pretty tough. which we don't want to have to do. But let's see what happens. But we thought we had a deal. Numerous times I'd get home, I'd say, First Lady, I had the most wonderful talk with Vladimir. I think we're finished. And then I'll turn on the television, or she'll say to me one time, wow, that's strange because they just bombed a nursing home.
Elsewhere, the European Union says it's close to a deal on its 18th round of sanctions against Russia. Speaking ahead of a meeting in Brussels, EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas said a state political agreement could come today. The latest package targets Russia's energy exports, banking sector, military industry, and proposes lowering the price cap on Russian oil from $60 to $45 per barrel. However, Slovakia's Prime Minister slams the proposal and warns the EU that he will block the measure if there are no guarantees to protect gas supply.
The news that comes from the United States that they will provide weapons to Ukraine so that they can defend themselves. Of course, we hope to reach also political agreement on the 18th sanctions package. We are very, very close. I hope it comes today. Then we have Middle East. On Middle East, of course, we talk about Gaza and the situation there. We have reached a common understanding with Israel to really improve the situation on the ground, but it's not about the paper, but actually implementation of the paper. So we see some positive signs when it comes to border crossings open. We see some positive signs of them reconstructing the electricity lines. Providing water, also more trucks of humanitarian aid coming in. But of course, we need to see more in order to see real improvement for the people on the ground. We will discuss Georgia. We see some serious backsliding in Georgia, and we will discuss what more can we do. There are all options on the table, including suspension of the visa fee regime and other elements that could make to the Georgian government to change the calculus. Today, a letter sent to Georgia also regarding the visa-free regime. So they have certain conditions that they had to comply with, and if these conditions are not met within that deadline, then we will have to suspend the visa-free. We, on our European side, we want to do more. It is also, good signs that we see from the United States that they have also realized that Russia does not really want peace. So in order to have peace, we need to support Ukraine and we need to put the pressure on Russia. And I also hope that Americans will move also with their sanctions package or tariffs so that the pressure is on Russia to really stop this war.
We'll now bring in Washington correspondent Maria Bird to discuss this further. Maria, great to hear from you again today. President Trump is now urging Attorney General Pam Bondi to release any credible information on Jeffrey Epstein after previously asking his supporters to move on. Why the sudden shift in tone?
Well, as you can see, there's been quite a bit of pressure put on the president. The president has had pressure not only from the Democrats, but obviously from those who were originally his base. Yes, we've heard that he said that, he doesn't necessarily need or require their support. And so this is a time, I think, for the president to really be looking at the reality of, I think, what has been obviously stated through his campaign cycle. In the campaign cycle, the president talked about the need and a desire to have these files released. And so we know that President Trump, potentially, there could be names and individuals that are part of his administration. There could be individuals, as we saw various pictures. And so I think the real question is, what names are on the list? And so the president is now, as he did during his campaign, and as many of his base have requested, he is now asking that the Attorney General provide some sort of insight. If there's any, as you stated, he has said, if there's any credible information that the public needs to know about. And so
we'll try and reconnect with Maria and get back to her on some of those issues we talked about and that we've been discussing. And one of our top stories is that. But in the meantime, let's move on to some other stories. China's economy has outperformed its expectations despite pressure from U.S. tariffs and prolonged crisis in the property market weigh on growth. The official data shows the world's second largest economy grew by 5.2% in the second quarter. That's better than the 5.1% forecast by many economists, but lower than the previous quarter. The Chinese economy growth was driven by a 6.4% surge in manufacturing with strong demand for electric vehicles, industrial robots, and 3D printing devices. The National Bureau of Statistics says Beijing's policy support and a fragile trade truce with Washington helped stabilize output. Right, I understand Maria Bird is back with us. Maria, apologies for that break. You were telling us about the situation with the Attorney General Pampondi and how the government wants her to release any credible information on Jeffrey Epstein after previously asking supporters to move on.
Yes, the president has obviously, this has been part of his campaign. I mean, he's been saying this pretty much even before he was president, the release of this. He discusses with the Biden administration. And so this has been something that Republicans have been asking for. The biggest concern is that these are young girls that is being expected or that have been abused through this. And so I think that's where the Republican Party is extremely concerned, is that they're asking to know who would have been involved in this type of sex trafficking. And so the president has called for the attorney general. We'll see how she responds. But again, it's really focused on any credible information. I think that is the key here. He's not requesting the full client list. He's asking for credible information.
And Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene has warned of significant consequences. Do we know what kind of political risks Mr. Trump and his camp could face if the backlash continues?
Really around support. Obviously, the MAGA group, they've been extremely supportive of the president. They are part of how he's been in office. We know there's a growing number of individuals who are part of the MAGA group within the Republican Party. We know that they have long since, you think about the big, beautiful bill, they were strong supporters of moving that forward. There's several pieces within his administration that he has been focused on that they have also taken a clear, direct, intentional measure within the congressional arm of the government to ensure its move forward. So it's really more so about support. Now, whether or not there's other information that could be released that they will be requesting or interviews that they will have, I think that will only be a clear indication if they do call for other interviews or any other testimonies to be brought forth.
And we understand the Justice Department recently released a memo denying the existence of a client list at all. Why has that not settled the issue for many of President Trump's supporters?
This has been something that predated the Republican president entering office. This goes back to, and the reality is, this was really an issue that Republicans had with the Democratic Party initially. And so Republicans this is not the first time they've requested this. They have been requesting this since the Biden administration. There were clear concerns around Epstein for many years, and this was a sign of kind of a victory against those individuals who have done this type of heinous crimes against young women. And so the Republican Party has stayed very firm in that. And if you think about the idea of the Republican Party, it's about family, it's about respect, it's about honor. And so this case is one that is very close and a focal point for the party.
And is there any indication at all that President Trump will publicly address the public on the Epstein issue again, or is he staying focused on foreign policy for now?
Well, he's very focused on foreign policy, but we have to remember once the Attorney General provides any type of credible information Once that occurs, you will see the president, hopefully, he will likely focus in on kind of how to move forward. As he said before, and as you mentioned earlier, he's been very clear on how can we just move forward. And so that has been one of his requests, is just to move forward. And so he will likely come out to give some sort of an address that will allow him to really focus on the movement forward.
And finally, Maria, let's talk about Russia. U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened tariffs if there's no ceasefire deal with Ukraine in 50 days, I think he said. Do those threats carry any weight, especially as Russia faces even tougher sanctions from both the EU and the United States?
It's very clear. He has said this, as we know, he's been a very close friend and ally of President Putin in the past, but we've seen a change over the last few months. We've seen where he has provided some guidance and direction to President Zelensky, the support that the U.S. has continued to provide to Ukraine as it relates to this war. And he's been talking about peace for quite some time, and he believed that he would have been able to assist in that process due to his relationship with President Putin. And so I think now it's beyond conversations, as the clip showed earlier, stating that he has these great conversations, thinking movement's going to move forward, and seeing that there are bombs or other types of disasters that occur to continue the war. And so I think that's where his concern lies. I think he has been focused from the beginning to try to end the war. And so these are a way in which, obviously, we have seen that tariffs has been kind of the front runner of how he has been managing through some of the foreign relations, and to ensure that people come to the table to speak with the U.S. and to work with the U.S. in a collaborative manner. And so I think he's using this as a measure and a way to potentially find and force through a level of peace in the near future in the region.
Maria, thanks again. The European Union says talks with the United States over a proposed 30% tariff on exports are underway. Speaking in Brussels, European Commissioner Markus Šefčovič said that the EU was making every effort to reach a negotiated solution before the August 1st deadline. Over the weekend, the Indonesian Prime Minister was in Brussels to finalize an economic agreement with the EU. Danish Foreign Minister Lars Rasmussen also weighed in, warning that Europe is prepared to respond if no deal with the US is reached. The EU is now considering retaliatory measures targeting up to 93 billion euros in US goods, and is engaging with partners like Canada, Japan, and India for possible coordinated action.
We are committed to continuing working with the US on a negotiated outcome. It has to be a mutually beneficial agreement on terms that are acceptable to both sides. At the same time, we are prepared for all possible scenarios. If no satisfactory solutions can be found, the EU remains ready to react, and that includes robust and proportionate countermeasures if required. And there was a strong feeling in the room of unity, so this statement is a statement which unites all of us.
Later today, I will continue my engagement with my US counterparts. The EU, as you know very well, never walks away without genuine effort, especially considering the hard work invested, how close we find ourselves to making a deal, and the clear benefits of the negotiated solution. But as I have said before, it takes two hands to clap, hence the second strand, rebalancing measures. We must be prepared for all outcomes, including, if necessary, well-considered, proportionate measures to restore balance in our transatlantic relationship. Our rebalancing measures on steel and aluminium are suspended until early August, and today the Commission is sharing with the Member States the proposal for the second list of goods, accounting of some 72 billion euros worth of US imports. They will now have a chance to discuss it. This does not exhaust our toolbox, and every instrument remains on the table. Third, I see the value in open and ever closer channels of communication with our like-minded partners. Fourth, the EU is doubling down on efforts to open new markets, and we dedicated an entire session to the ongoing negotiations.
As part of efforts for stability amid trade tension, the European Union and Indonesia have signed a landmark free trade deal, sending what both sides call a strong message of cooperation in an uncertain global economy. The Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement includes digital trade, tariff phase-outs, and a new visa cascade for Indonesian travelers to Europe. Indonesian President said the deal will accommodate each country's economic needs.
Together we are sending a strong message about the importance of predictable, long-term partnerships. Partnerships that are built on trust, reciprocity, transparency and shared values. This new trade agreement will bring great opportunities to both our people. Indonesia is one of the largest economies in the world, with a GDP of 1.2 trillion euros. It is a leading supplier of goods that are vital for the digital and green transition, and it represents a growing market of over 287 million people. Together, we represent a market of 730 million people. This agreement will also help strengthen the supply chains of critical raw materials that we need to power the clean and the digital transition. We want not only a secure supply, but we want responsible supply. This we have in common. That means respect for the environment, respect for the local communities, and a clear focus on good jobs and local value creation.
And coming up after the break, Cuban Labor Minister Marta Elena Feito Cabrera resigns after her comments denying the existence of beggars in the country. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the program. More tributes continue to pour in for late Nigerian former President Muhammadu Buhari, who was buried in his Daura, his hometown of Daura in Katsina State, Nigeria, yesterday. The latest from the Congress of Nigerian Students at the University of Johannesburg, which has described the former Nigerian presidency as one shaped by a unique blend of economic philosophies and policy approaches. The students lauded the two-time leader for his exemplary leadership of the country. Meanwhile, the acting Nigerian ambassador to South Africa, Alexander Ajayi, says President Buhari's leadership was defined by a strong commitment to policy continuity and the refinement of existing economic frameworks. Our South Africa correspondent, Innocent Semusa, reports.
Former Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari, who led Nigeria from 2015 to 2023, implemented several key economic policies during a period of global financial uncertainty. Reflecting on his legacy, I spoke with the Congress of Nigerian Students at the University of Johannesburg in South Africa.
He made a lot of policies. He had a lot of ministers and support with him. So he tried to close the border just to be able to have close the importation of goods so that Nigeria can Nigerians can patronize the Nigeria made in Nigeria goods.
I would say Nigeria lost a great leader because he put in his best Putin in his best. So if I would remember him, I think I remember some of his policies on handling corruption.
For some, it's mixed emotions.
President Buhari was a good man, but in terms of his leadership capability, I won't say he's a transformational leadership, because remember, immediately he came into office, it took like 6 months to even constitute his cabinet, and this is an administration that is coming on a wave of change, and we are all frustrated with the Goodluck Jonathan's administration, and then another administration comes on board, and with the 6 months, there is no cabinet, and all those things deteriorated the whole system.
Meanwhile, at the Nigerian embassy in Pretoria, dignitaries continue to pay their final respects. Acting Nigerian ambassador to South Africa, Alexandra Ajayi, describes Buhari as a steadfast champion of social investment.
President Buhari is one of the few leaders that Nigeria benefited immensely from his services right from his youth. You understand? Because barely the age of 32, he was already a military governor, in the northeastern state then of today, of present-day Borno State. He was a military governor then, and he laid the foundation, because he laid the foundation for that state to take off. And shortly after that, he was appointed the first minister of petroleum resources in the country. That was around 78. He was the one who actually, it was his admin when he was the minister that he created the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, our main oil company today, and he was the one who also was credited for building most of the refineries, in Kaduna, in Port Harcourt, in Warri, all the major economic hubs.
Meanwhile, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa paid tribute to former President Buhari, saying his leadership brought the two nations closer together. As Nigeria reflects on President Buhari's legacy, his economic choices continue to spark debate between the promise of self-resilience and the realities of a complex global economy. From Pretoria, South Africa, at the Nigerian Embassy, Innocent Simos, Channels Television News.
London's Mayor Sadiq Khan is making his first visit to Nigeria and Africa as mayor. He leads a delegation of 26 unicorn companies who are hoping to solidify relations with businesses in Nigeria. In an interview with our correspondent, Amarachi Ubani, Mr. Khan says it's important for London and Lagos to connect in such a way to strengthen future developmental innovations.
I speak with a huge source of pride. I'm immensely proud, but also, frankly speaking, surprised that I'm the first mayor of London to lead a trade delegation to any country in Africa. We're here in Lagos, of course, and it's really important for me to say at the outset, because I appreciate, Britain and Nigeria haven't always been equal partners, but we come here on this trade delegation with great businesses, not as patrons, not in a patronizing way, but as partners, because I recognize that Lagos is doing remarkably well. The fastest growing tech cluster in the world is Lagos, but the #1 tech city in Europe is London. The #1 tech city in Africa is Lagos. So it's great to be here, experiencing the wonderful hospitality, but the great energy, the great dynamism, and meeting the great businesses as well.
Let's talk about the delegation that you're leading. I see a lot of tech people, a lot of sustainable people, sustainable energy people, on your team. What exactly is the focus here? What are they hoping to achieve?
We spoke to friends in Lagos and Nigeria and said, what sort of businesses are doing well in Lagos? Where do you need help to scale even more? And the sectors that are doing really well, what you could do with assistance, is in sustainability and in financial services and fintech. And so we've brought 26 businesses who have got expertise and experience in those sectors. They've got a jam-packed itinerary whilst they're here. They came yesterday morning. Already some deals have been done, really exciting. And the idea is to meet other businesses here and to have those partnerships where you can flourish in Lagos and flourish in London, really important. And let me give you an example. You could be somebody who is thinking of starting a business, doesn't know how to. You could have started a business, don't know how to scale up. You could have scaled up, but don't know how to accelerate even further or get access to capital or go to new markets. I've set up something called Grow London, which helps London businesses, but also set up now Grow London Global. So if you're a Nigerian company who wants to come to London, we'll provide you with assistance. It's like a concierge service, so you can do well in London. You benefit and prosper as a Nigerian company, and so do we.
Well, this week has seen the visit of some of the UK's top politicians, one of them being the Deputy Mayor of London for Business and Growth, Howard Dorber. Mr. Dorber leads a tech-focused trade delegation to Lagos who hope to cut as many deals during the period of their visit. Our correspondent, Amarachi Ubani, reports.
The back garden of the residence of the British Deputy High Commissioner Johnny Baxter comes alive with special guests, as it plays host to a very special delegation from London. Mr. Baxter is absent, tending to other official duties, like welcoming the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, but other members of the Deputy High Commission are playing host to the Deputy Mayor of London for Business and Growth, Howard Dorber, and his delegation, visiting Lagos for the first time. Country Director for Business and Trade at the High Commission, Mark Smithson, welcomes the visitors, emphasizing why Lagos was chosen for this auspicious occasion.
According to Deal Room, Lagos is now the fastest growing tech ecosystem in the world for 2025. That makes this the perfect time to bring a UK tech delegation here. Lagos' strengths in financial services, professional expertise, and tech innovation align closely with the UK's industrial and trade strategies, reinforcing Nigeria's role as one of our most strategically important markets. The investment case for Nigeria is compelling, and the links to London are already very strong.
The Deputy Mayor of London for Business and Growth shows he's well aware of the potentials of Lagos and its close comparison with London.
London has between 200,000 and 500,000 Nigerian people with Nigerian passports, people who were born in Nigeria, people born second, third generation, or people who can trace their lineage back to Nigeria. And that means we would be one of the top 20 Nigerian cities in the world if we were a Nigerian city. And that's why London and Nigeria, London and Lagos feel so close. We really have a shared DNA and a shared spirit. London is one of the most entrepreneurial cities in the world, and Lagos is one of the most entrepreneurial cities in the world. And that's why I'm very proud that we've brought some of London's brightest and most exciting businesses with us.
The Lagos State Government, represented by the Commissioner for Trade and Investment, Mrs. Folashade Ambrose Medebem, whets the investors' appetite with a laundry list of opportunities awaiting the London delegation.
You've actually come to a state where there is a lot of structure, where there's a strategy that transcends administrations. We have the Lagos State Development Plan. We have the Themes Plus agenda, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with. We have a state that has in excess of almost 30 million residents, a majority of whom are very young, dynamic. And in Lagos State, we actually have and contribute more than 50% of non-oil revenue. And 90% of the manufacturing firms are actually domiciled here in Lagos State. We have creative enterprises, logistic giants. We have a thriving informal sector.
Among the delegation are representatives of various tech and sustainability companies, all looking forward to participating in this short but unique opportunity in Lagos. Amarachi Ubani, Channels Television News.
Same with the United Kingdom. This time we're actually there. It's set to resume processing Syrian asylum claims 7 months after decisions were paused following the fall of the Assad regime. Asylum Minister Angela Eagle said that the Home Office now has enough information to make well-evidenced determinations. Local media said that over 20 asylum seekers have already voluntarily returned to Syria, with forced returns possibly beginning by the year end. The government has published updated guidance for officials to make decisions on Syrian claims. At least 20 people have been killed during a crowd surge at an aid distribution site in southern Gaza. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, backed by the US and Israel, said 19 people were trampled to death and one person was stabbed in a chaotic and dangerous incident in Khan Yunis. The organization claimed the surge was incited by agitators in the crowd linked to Hamas, although this has not been independently verified. Earlier, Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis reported receiving 10 bodies, all believed to have died from suffocation after aid operations were halted by the foundation's security contractors. Late last week, Poland reinstated controls at 52 border crossings with Germany in response to Berlin's tougher migration policy, which also include border checks. Well, let's get more on this. Joining us with more is the EU's internal border checks and how they could affect the bloc is DW correspondent Chiponda Chimbelu in Berlin. Chiponda, great to see you today. How have the new border controls been received?
Well, the response to Poland's move to reinstate controls at its borders with Germany is mixed. Now, there's those who feel that this is long overdue, and there are people who say that this is an attempt by politicians to score points by appearing tougher on migration. Now, reinstating border controls is actually a trend that we are seeing across all of Europe. It's not just with Poland and Germany. And that's because migration is a hot button issue. And it is also a major reason why populist parties and far-right parties are more popular across the continent. And that is why even moderate politicians have adopted a tougher stance against migration. But having the border checks within the EU is controversial, and that is because there are questions about the effectiveness of these border controls and whether enough migrants can actually be stopped, and if the cost of doing that is actually worth it.
Controversy is one thing, but how expensive is this project?
Well, the additional security is one major cost. Of course, more people will be needed to carry out those controls. So there's more security officials and customs officials who are required at the borders. And then, of course, there's the longer commutes for more than 3 million Europeans who cross the border every day for work, to work in another country, because of course they also live in another country across the border. Now, these checks could of course also mean supply chain disruptions, and that will of course lead to economic stress for cross-border communities. Now, Europe's so-called Schengen area is actually a single market for 29 countries, and it is supposed to eliminate internal border checks for goods, services, labor, and capital. And that is why experts say that extended permanent checks could lead to higher prices, and of course they could also disrupt supply chains. And this is why there's, of course, major economic concerns about this. But of course, it's not just about the economies of European countries. It's also about the future of the Schengen system itself and how that could affect the European Union.
It's going to come to that. What could happen to the Schengen system, which originally allows for the free movement of people, goods, and services?
Well, right now we have about a dozen European countries, so about a third of Schengen countries that have border checks in place. And it is, of course, worth noting that those Polish controls are in response to Germany's own border checks. Now, if these checks do remain in place, the Schengen system, which is an agreement among 29 countries, could, of course, be called into question. And that, in turn, could also undermine the legal integrity of other EU treaties. So the trust in the European project itself is actually at stake. And so this is not just about the Schengen system, it's also about the future of the European Union.
Chiponda, thanks again. In Greece, a migrant reception center on the island of Crete is struggling to cope as a fresh wave of arrivals pushes it to the breaking point. The Agia Exhibition Center in Chania is housing nearly 1,000 migrants, with hundreds more arriving every day, mostly from war-torn Sudan. The deputy mayor of Chania, Eleni Zevrudaki, confirmed that the Crete received over 600 migrants in a single day. Footage from Sunday shows crowds sleeping on floors, clashes erupting in tense moments and a sick child receiving medical attention. To ease pressure, migrants are being moved by bus to Suda port and ferried to the mainland for relocation to other centers.
We have now the biggest amount is from Sudan, because they have an official typical war between their communities, and they want to live to find a better life. We can't control them. Here in Kenya, we don't have problem. We never had a problem. The problem is only the amount of people, nothing else. If there will not be an agreement between the countries, our country and Libya, then the problem will be increased. This is the point. Of course, if they learn from the people that are coming from Africa that the situation will be more difficult here, probably they will stop coming in that amount and so on.
Some locals doesn't want refugees in Crete. They don't understand that they are not the problem. We care about the refugees. We want to help them go wherever they want. Greece accept many Greek people. We accept the refugees, and we want to wish them good luck, even if they are here or where they are. We care about them, but not all the people.
Cuba's Labor Minister Marta Elena Feito Cabrera has resigned after she sparked public outrage by claiming there are no beggars in the country. Speaking in Parliament, she suggested that Cubans seen searching through rubbish were doing so by choice to make what she called easy money. The comments drew sharp criticism from Cubans both at home and abroad and prompted a response from President Miguel Diaz. Her resignation follows growing discontent over rising poverty levels and food shortages as Cuba continues to battle economic crisis. And still ahead on the program. Archaeologists unveiled a 3,800-year-old city in Peru after 8 years of research and conservation. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Rio de Janeiro has officially submitted a request for the city to become the permanent headquarters of BRICS. The proposal comes after the city hosted the 2025 BRICS summit. A letter from Mayor Eduardo Paes has been sent to Brazil's President Lula, formalizing the request. The city council has nominated the historic Brazilian Jockey Club building as a potential site which offers 12 floors of space in central Rio. City officials say hosting BRICS permanently would boost diplomatic profile and attract foreign investment while providing the bloc with a physical base for regular meetings and strategic cooperation.
Rio was the capital of Brazil for such a long time, and now it's Brasilia, far away from the coast. And Rio has this sense that somehow it's losing a little bit of international appearance or international vitality. So the idea that somehow we're going to create a physical building, a specific center for the BRICS here in Rio, we'll put the highlights again back in the city. And it will be also, I think, interesting to somehow materialize what the BRICS are going to do in the end of the day. I always joke that the BRICS, they don't even have a website, like a formal website. It's quite difficult to actually track down what they're doing. So I think it will be a win-win situation. By one hand, we'll have an institutional materiality, and for Rio and for Brazil, it will be incredible to have the center here. Because in the end of the day, what you have, diplomats from across the globe are going to be around here. You'll have a lot of bureaucracy that have to form to create this kind of stuff. So I think in the end of the day, it will be incredible for the country, for the city. If you look to the UN, for example, you do have people all the time in New York or in Geneva, for example, discussing challenges on the world, knowing each other, having a cup of coffee. So bringing over all those people in a specific place, you are able to create a sort of interesting movement, I would say, so people can start to discuss, for example, how similar challenges between India and Brazil, for example, could materialize into strategic status or movements and stuff like this. So for the BRICS will be incredible, a next step, a different layer, I would say, of international bureaucracy, of interesting stuff like this. If you look to Trump's last messages online, he actually mentioned the BRICS, saying that any country involved in the anti-American BRICS movement somehow will be charged with, I'm not 100%, tariffs and stuff like this. So for Brazil, I would say it's an interesting alternative model, not going to be against the US necessarily, but maybe a parallel system that can induce this kind of stuff.
The UN's top emergency relief official has released $3 million to support South Sudanese refugees in Ethiopia, where thousands are struggling without access to basic services. At least 35,000 people fleeing violence in South Sudan have crossed into Ethiopia's Gambela region, where resources are already strained. The funding, drawn from the Central Emergency Response Fund, will support both refugees and the communities that are generously hosting them.
Emergency Relief Coordinator today allocated $3 million from the Central Emergency Response Fund to provide life-saving assistance to South Sudanese refugees arriving in the Gambela region in the western part of the country. At least 35,000 people fleeing escalating violence in South Sudan have crossed the border into Ethiopia's Gambela region. This influx is stretching already limited resources, and refugees face extremely difficult conditions without access to adequate food, shelter, and other basic services. The new funding from the Central Emergency Response Fund will support both refugees and the communities that are generously hosting them. It will also be prioritizing food, protection, shelter, clean water, sanitation, health, and other critical support for vulnerable groups, including women and children, who have yet to receive any assistance.
Meanwhile, the United Nations has released a stark warning on global progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals, saying only 35% of targets are on track. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called it a global development emergency, while noting that gains have been made in education, health, and energy access. He urged governments to act with urgency and unity and called for action across 6 key areas: food, energy, climate, jobs, education, and digital transformation. The report also calls for implementation of the Madeleine framework for action for strengthening data-driven policymaking.
Living in extreme poverty, in intensifying climate impacts, and in relentless debt service, draining the resources that countries need to invest in their people. We must also recognize the deep linkages between underdevelopment and conflicts. Today's report shows that the Sustainable Development Goals are still within reach, but only if we act with urgency, unity, and unwavering resolve.
Data reveals in the report just tells us a story of the positive progress alongside turbulent challenges. Well, despite all those monumental challenges, the path forward is clear. In the report, it shows that the progress is still possible if we scale up solutions and build on hard-earned hard-earned gains.
35% of the goals are on target, and some are extremely important. Extreme poverty has reduced. Child mortality and women's mortality have dramatically reduced. And the access of girls to education, and in general the access to education, has substantially increased. So if there were no sustainable development goals, many of these achievements would never have been reached. Let's be clear. I think that
Well, Malawi is getting ready for its election. The country's electoral commission has officially opened the campaign period for the general election in Lilongwe, calling on political parties to conduct reputable campaigns. The electoral commission chairperson, Annabel Ntalimanya, is urging parties to follow the electoral code of conduct while stressing the importance of not inciting violence among youth voters. The electoral campaign period is for 60 days and is to run from July 14 to September 14, offering party leaders an opportunity to present their vision to the electorate, with voters casting their ballots on September 16. The general election is expected to be fiercely fought between incumbent President Lazarus Chakwera of the Malawi Congress Party and former Presidents Peter Mutharika and Joyce Banda.
We are reiterating our commitment to deliver free, fair, credible elections to the people of Malawi. We remain open to engagement and dialogue on the remaining activities.
Talk about enough staple food. Talk about big stadiums in each provincial capital. Talk about reducing unemployment, reducing deficit in the balance.
In all their forms are prohibited. And so what is prohibited is the giving out of handouts to the one who is giving, the one who is procuring. Like if people are asking a candidate to give them something, that's prohibited, but also those who are actually receiving.
And finally, on the program, a 3,800-year-old ancient city in northern Peru has been opened to the public after nearly a decade of research and restoration. The city of Penico, believed to belong to the Caral civilization, includes massive public buildings, housing complexes, and ceremonial spaces. Lead archaeologist Mauro Ordenes says the site was a major center for social gathering and trade. He added that the city has artifacts found from the highlands, jungle, and coast. One of the most striking discoveries is the ceremonial hall of Potutus, which is a central space for rituals and decision-making. Penico is located about 180 kilometers north of Lima and dates back to around 1800 BCE. That's our program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Joke Rogers.